This is the new 2025 Yamaha TENERE 700, the latest and greatest version of this beloved model. And I've been lucky enough to get some seat time on this bike over the past few weeks. I've put it to the test the only way that I know how, by taking it on some epic adventures and really just using it for what it was built for. I've taken it through all different types of trails and conditions, open fast flowing trails, slower technical trails, into the sand, into some mud, some rocky trails, and even some on-road and commuting kilometres as well. Now, the TENERE has always been a great adventure bike, but in this video, I'm going to be talking about the changes Yamaha has made to this new 2025 model, and whether or not these changes have made an improvement. I'll cover off on the bike's performance, and also whether or not it's a bike worth looking at if you're wanting to get onto a middleweight adventure bike, or even if it's worth upgrading if you've already got one of the previous TENEREs. So let's get into it. G'day tool adventurers, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all doing well as usual. Now this is it right here. This is the 2025 Yamaha TENERE 700 that I've been using for around about a month. I've put about 2,500 kilometers on the bike in that time with a couple of epic adventures. So I've had an absolute blast. I won't give it all away just yet. We've got to wait till we get into the review, but I've had a really fun time on this bike. But before we fully dive into this review and I give you all of my thoughts on this bike, the good, the bad, the ugly, absolutely everything, I want to run through some of the changes that Yamaha have made to this 2025 model when you compare it to the previous TENERE. Yamaha have said that they've listened to their previous TENERE customers and owners, and they've listened to the things that people didn't quite like on that bike or things they wanted tweaked. So I want to run through some of those changes that they've made. I did own a 2019 TENERE 700, which I sold about 2.5 years ago. So for me, it's pretty easy to compare that to this and notice those changes on some things that I personally didn't quite like 100% on that bike. So I'll give a run around on some of those things that Yamaha have changed, but it's really cool to see a manufacturer actually listen to their customers and make those changes to improve the next year's model. Firstly, we have a one-piece seat on this bike now. My 2019 model did not have a one-piece seat. It was two pieces, which was a little bit strange, but good to see that Yamaha listened there and they've gone the one-piece seat. The next big change that Yamaha have made is with the fuel tank location on this bike. A big complaint with the previous model was the top-heavy feel of the TENERE, so they've moved this fuel tank forward and down slightly to try and improve on that. They've upgraded the TFT display. It's a full color system now compared to the previous black and white one. It's got everything on there that you need, and they've also upgraded the toggle switch system on the handlebars there. The previous one was a bit of a scroll sort of setup. It was a weird one to use, but this setup on there is much better. Along with that TFT display upgrade, you've also got two ride modes to select from, a full power mode, and the second one is more of a dulled down, possibly a rain mode if you like. They've also made a separate ABS button, which you can just press and hold for a couple of seconds, fully turns off ABS and traction control modes as well. And lastly, possibly the biggest and most notable change on this bike is the suspension. It's been fully reworked and upgraded from the previous models. I won't get into it too much just yet. I'll wait a little bit further down the video to talk fully about the suspension, but it's really changed the way this bike performs. Now let's talk about the comfort and ergonomics of the TENERE right here. I'm not going to go and say it's perfect, it's definitely not, but for me it's 6 foot tall. I find this rider triangle to be really good. It's pretty close to perfect for me. But the biggest thing that I noticed was the addition of the larger foot pegs. They make a massive difference, especially when you're standing on those trails for long periods of time. Having those larger foot pegs makes an absolute massive difference. But even sitting, the way my knees would sit and where my arms would sit on the bars, it was just really good, really enjoyable. The next big difference that I noticed was the change with the fuel tank location being forward and down slightly. It makes that cockpit feel a lot more roomy. You can move around the bike a lot easier in the harder technical sort of stuff. You actually get your knees to grip the bike really well when you compare this to the previous TENERE, which just felt a bit fat and you couldn't really move your legs around and get on top of the bike. With that tank being lower as well, it does feel like you're sitting on top of the TENERE rather than down in it like the previous one felt as well. So overall, a much more enjoyable experience off-road, being able to move around the bike much easier. Now the new fairing being a one-piece compared to the three-piece on the older models looks a bit different, but to be honest, its performance is pretty much the same. Keeps that wind off your chest on those freeway rides, so it does a pretty good job there, but I wouldn't say it's any better or worse than the older one. Now the only gripe that I have with the comfort of this bike is the seat. Now it's not the worst seat that I've ever had, that's for sure, but it could be a little bit better, could be improved. Most of my rides are off-road, so I'm up and down off the bike, moving around, so it's not a major issue. but I did do a few long freeway runs on the Tenere, and after about an hour or so, I did find myself wiggling around trying to get comfortable again. So I think a seat upgrade wouldn't go astray on this Tenere. It does get a little bit solid after about an hour, hour and a half for me. Now the engine and gearbox of the Tenere 700, it's basically unchanged from the previous models. We've got the ever reliable CP2 engine here from Yamaha, which is on the previous Teneres, so not really any changes there, but it has been slightly upgraded. The major difference is Yamaha's chip controlled throttle, which is the ride-by-wire throttle system. Now the engine on this 2025 does feel a lot more playful and fun. It's very snappy off the bottom, especially in those lower gears, I found. Now I'm not putting that down to the engine performance, I think that's pretty much the same. I'm putting it down to the new throttle, the new ride-by-wire system. That's what gives it that snappier feel off the mark. Makes the bike feel even more playful than it did before. But there is a bit of a negative of that, I found. It is really good off the mark with the throttles, real snappy, but when you get off the power, it's also pretty snappy as well. I didn't notice it off-road too much, but I did notice a lot when on-road, trying to stick to around, say, 50, 60 kilometers an hour on road, trying to keep a constant speed. If you rolled off the throttle just the tiniest bit, you would feel a bit of a lurch forward from the bike. So when rolling off the power, yeah, there is a slight lurch forward on the bike. It's not a major thing when off-road. I really didn't notice it off-road at all, but when on-road, trying to keep a constant speed, you could just feel a little bit. It's not a deal breaker. I think the good outweighs the bad there with the new throttle and that snappy off the bottom feel. That's really good, but it would be nice if we could somehow smooth out that throttle when you get off the throttle so you don't get that lurch forward. When it comes to the gearbox, it's pretty much unchanged from the previous Tenere. Does the job great. The gear changes are nice and easy. You got plenty down low for the slow technical riding, first and second gear. It really lugs along nice and easy. But then if you want to jump on the freeway for an hour or two, you've got plenty of up and go up in the top gears to sit on 110, 120 kilometers an hour, and you can do those rides with ease. Now let's get into what is the biggest and best upgrade that they've made on this new 2025 model, and that is of course the suspension. The suspension has been fully reworked, fully revamped. You've got fully adjustable front and rear compression and rebound, and adjustable preload as well on the front and rear as well. So they've fully gone to town on this bike, and it absolutely changes the way this bike rides. Now the suspension on the previous Teneres was not ideal. It was far too soft for the bike, especially if riders wanted to push this bike off-road, test its limits. You're probably going to bottom out at some point and have to pull back and slow up a little bit. So comparing the two is basically night and day. It's an amazing difference on this bike. And I really think for 90% of riders, there's not going to be a need to change any of the suspension components on this new 2025 model. Now having this firmer suspension setup on this bike just makes for a better overall ride. I found the biggest difference to be when I would come to erosion mounds along the tracks. You come to these a lot on your adventure trails, but having the ability to know that I could hit those erosion mounds with speed on this bike and know that it would handle it was absolutely amazing. The previous model, I would have been slowing down and probably rolling these erosion mounds, but on this bike, hit it with speed, catch a bit of air, the bike would land perfectly. I didn't bottom it out once on any of those erosion mounds that I hit. I'm sure it does have its limits. If you want to push it even further, you probably will bottom out at some point, but for all of these general erosion mounds that I hit, it really went well. And the other thing I noticed is the performance of the front brakes is much better on this, having the firmer suspension. You don't get as much of a dip at the front when you get hard on those brakes. And lastly, although I didn't carry too much luggage on the bike, I probably had around 10 kilograms of stuff strapped to the back of this bike at any one time. I do feel that if you wanted to chuck a few more bags on there and go on a full camping trip, that this suspension could handle it, at least for a rider of my size. I'm around 100 kilos with all of my gear on, so you strap another 15, 20 kilos of luggage on the back. I feel like if you adjusted the preload on the rear shock, this bike could still handle it without having to go and change any of the shocks and upgrade any springs or anything like that. So overall, I'm super happy with the suspension setup on this 2025 Tenere. It's really made a great bike even greater and just makes the riding experience just that much more enjoyable. So let's talk about the new tech and the ride modes on this Tenere right here. Over the last few years, the Tenere's always been known for its simplicity and a very basic setup when it comes to its electrics and all of its technology when compared to other bikes in the same segment. but it's a thing that a lot of adventurers really want on these bikes. It's probably why it's been so popular. Its reliability, it just brings down the chance of having an electrical gremlin when you're out in the outback, and possibility of not getting home because of an electrical drama. So that's a big selling point, a bit of a point of difference with this Tenere. But with technology always changing every year and other bikes just going further and further into the tech space, Yamaha have finally made a bit of a change. I don't think they've gone overboard at all, but they have added in a few things which I think a lot of people are going to like. Now we do of course have the new TFT display up front, which I mentioned earlier. It's a 6.3 inch display, full coloured, and it has everything on there that you need, but nothing more. A lot of these other bikes will have a lot of stuff on their display, a lot of things that aren't really needed, to be honest. So it's got everything you need, nothing more, so you don't have to waste your time scrolling through a whole bunch of different settings to try and find the thing you need. And I also really love the separate ABS button next to the TFT display dash. Just simplifies that process of getting the ABS and traction control modes off. So as for the ride modes, you've got two ride modes. You've got Sport, which is 1, and Explore, which is 2. 1 being the full power and 2 being a bit more of a dulled down version. Personally, I didn't find myself switching out of 1, which is the Sport mode. I was happy to leave it in that for all of my riding. That's just what I wanted. But it is good to have the option there, I guess, for people who are new to a bigger twin adventure bike, or even if you're in some rain or muddy conditions, maybe you want to dial the power down. But for me personally, I didn't need it at all. So I'll go through a quick rapid fire of a few things that I really like on the bike and a few other things that I don't quite like as much. But the first two things that I really like on this bike, number one, being that suspension, of course. It changes the way this bike rides compared to the previous models. It's absolutely amazing the difference that it makes on this bike and being able to push off-road. I absolutely love that suspension, and I think most riders are going to love that as well. And the second thing I really love is the new placement of the fuel tank being forward and down slightly. It has changed how the bike performs as well, along with that suspension, but just makes the bike feel like it has a lower center of gravity. And as I said earlier in the video, you feel like you're actually riding on top of the Tenere instead of sitting down in it like the previous model felt. Now, two things that I don't quite like about the bike, I'm not going to say they're deal breakers and I wouldn't want one because of these, but the first one I've already mentioned, which is the jerky throttle when you go off the power. I really hope Yamaha could smooth that out somehow. I'm not quite sure what they could do, but if they could eliminate that, that would almost make this bike perfect in my eyes. And the second thing that I don't quite like is the speedo on this bike is out. It's out by around about 10%, which was the same on my 2019 model as well. So when you're doing 100, you're probably doing more like 90. If you're doing 110, you're probably doing 100. So I know all bikes are usually out by a little bit, so you don't end up speeding, but this bike just seems to be out by a longer way than the rest of them. So it's a bit of a weird one. You can just ride with your phone, GPS, whatever, and it'll tell you your speed instead, but it'd be nice if that was adjusted to be a little bit more close to the actual speed that you're doing. So basically, to wrap up this whole thing, the Tenere 700 has always been a great adventure bike. It's always been a really good option in the mid-weight adventure bike segment. But with Yamaha listening to all the previous Tenere owners over the years and making all these changes to help those owners change those things they didn't quite like, they've really made this 2025 model even better. With the suspension being fully revamped and changing the way the bike performs off-road, you've got the fuel tank being moved forward and down, which changes the center of gravity and just the way the bike feels, being able to move around the bike more easily. And then you go and throw in the tech package and the ride modes. It really makes the bike feel more modern without going overboard too much. And with the ever reliable CP2 engine still being in this bike, which has been on the Tenere for years now, and if you go and do your own research and try and find anyone that's had a major failure with this bike, I think you'll be struggling to find any of that. So knowing that you got the reliability still in this bike is really great. The Tenere has been a bit of a powerhouse here in Australia. It's a really popular model, and I think that will continue with this new 2025 as well. I think it's a good option for people who already have a single cylinder adventure bike. They've got a bit of experience and they're looking to move into something a little bit bigger in the twin category and maybe with a bit more of an off-road focused adventure ride. But in saying that, I really think it is still a good option for people who already have a Tenere and want to upgrade. If your Tenere 700 is a couple of years old, 3 or 4 years old even, and you want to upgrade, I think this 2025 model is a really good option, and you'll definitely be able to see the differences that I'm talking about from the previous model to this one. Now the price is creeping up a little bit on this Tenere 700. This 25 model is just a touch over $21,000 here right away in Australia. So it is creeping up like everything is, unfortunately, but if you go and add in things like crash bars, a bash plate, some luggage carrying, bars on the back or soft luggage, whatever it is you need for the bike, you're going to be looking at a pretty hefty price once you add all of that up and mod the bike to how you want it to be. But at least you know the reliability on this bike. You're not going to get stranded. It's going to get you home. It's just something you have to look at with all that price and all the mods that you're going to add on. So I've absolutely loved my time here with the 2025 Yamaha TENERE 700. Massive thank you to Yamaha Australia for letting me borrow this bike for around about a month. It is going to be really hard to let this bike go and give it back. I really don't want to. It's really invigorated my love for this bike. I did love my 2019 model that I had. Did regret selling it, so it's been really cool to jump back on the new model and test it out, feel the differences. I've got one more epic adventure to share with all of you with the TENERE. If you follow me on Instagram or Facebook, you probably would have seen some photos, some stories from my trip I did over to Fraser Island on this TENERE. I went over there with my good mate Kai from Endeavour Motorcycle Tours. 3 days of riding in the sand, and it was a first for me to take a big twin cylinder adventure bike over and ride in the sand for 3 days. So it was an experience, that's for sure. Plenty of fun, an awesome trip. So make sure you subscribe to the channel before you go if you want to see that one coming in the next week or two. But now it's time to throw it over to all of you adventurers. I want to hear what you have to say about the new 2025 TENERE. What do you think? I want to know everything. Do you like the look of it? Do you want to upgrade your TENERE that you already have? Are you looking to jump onto one from a single cylinder bike you already have? Let me know everything. Jump down the comments below. I love reading all the comments after every one of these videos. And if you did enjoy this video and you got something out of it, be sure to like the video before you go. It does help support the channel, help the channel grow, and I appreciate all the support. A massive thank you once again for tuning in and watching these videos. Make sure you ride safe on your own two-wheel adventures. See you in the next one. Well, that is done. I really don't want to give this bike back.